So you can go all the way down, I come, you come, we exclusive, all of those, and then you can kind of find the word that I texted you. And then there's also commands. So right down there is the one that says pialo, which is you come. And then down here are multiple example sentences. And these sentences are meant to be useful to you. So you can come here and say, hopefully one of these will be useful to you and you can start using them. The really nice thing about this online dictionary is they all have audio files. And so directly across, you can see here, I'll click on one, and they all have audio files linked to each one, so you'll be able to hear Myaamia being spoken. So all of these have these really short, quick audio files. If you're on your smartphone, but you don't have the app, you can still go onto the website and you can still access the audio files from there as well. And so for basic words, like nail on a kate, aya, greetings, parting terms, those sorts of things. If you want to look up, say you want to say, see you later, okay, parting term, and you don't know how to say that or how to spell it, you can just type that in. And then what shows up here is an entry that has that exact phrase in it. Okay, so then you click on it to find out more, or if you want to hear the audio file. And then sometimes in the English it'll give you a little bit of extra explanation for what it means. So this is a common departing phrase, just like the one right below it. So you might get a little bit more information as to what the word actually means on that English side of things. So again, this is meant to be very user-friendly, very easily accessible. One of the things about this is each entry is added on an individual basis, so one by one, which takes a lot of time. So very often you'll come across words where you're looking for them and things pop up that aren't associated with that word, or initially you would think they're not associated with that word. So let me type something in here. Yeah. Oh, what's a better one? I added that. I'll use hoche for example. This is hey, trying to get somebody's attention. So I had just added the top one, but say that wasn't added, the three others below it would still pop up. And that's because hoche, the word that you search, can be found in their example sentences. And so if something pops up, that means that word that you typed in is in there somewhere. And you just have to kind of dig in, and it'll even give you a hint as to where it is. So hoche, I can't read from here. So for that second one, hoche nunga ayu lo. Hoche nunga ayu lo. And so it'll be in the example sentences, okay? So if something pops up, that means that word, whatever you typed in, is in there. It just doesn't have its own entry yet. All right, so now what I'm going to show you is the app version. Nika, Jonathan, want to help me hook this up? And I've been told that when I plug it in, it kind of gives a loud pop, so be prepared. Hold on. Doesn't your phone? That was nice. Oh, that's not bad.
That was anticlimactic.
All right, it wasn't as loud of a pop as we thought. Yeah, so this app is for the iPhone and the iPad for iOS devices initially. We'll start there, and then as they continue, the computer science team continues developing, they're going to make it available for Android and hopefully more. But for right now, it's just for the iPhone. And it's an exact replica of the web version. It's connected online, and so anything that you find on the online dictionary web version can also be found on the app. With this, just a little bit of a format different, just to make it more easily accessible for people on the go. I can still type in, it's like, so if somebody texted me with Pialo and I said, I don't know what that means. So you just type it in, you get search. That top one comes up, you can click on it, and then to get the audio files, okay, you just click on the word, okay? So these 3 bars up here at the top are the same as the sections on the online dictionary. You have basic, which are just the basic conjugations, I come, you come, the commands, which is the one we're looking for, and then also all the example sentences. So very user-friendly. We hope this was kind of version 2.0 of the online dictionary, and so we've been trying to make it as easy and easily accessible as possible. And what I want to do for you guys now is talk about something in your packet. I put in there a little sheet. I think it's probably in the back. It's a full sheet of paper that has 2 phrases in it, okay? Now, if you have an iPhone or even if you have another device, you can just, if you have another device, you can go onto the Chrome or the web version and look on the online dictionary, and you can try to figure out what these phrases are saying, and then also figure out a good response for them, okay? And after the presentation, Dr. David Costa and I will be back at our table, and you can come out and test your responses out on us when there's a break in presentations. So try to see if you can figure out what those 2 phrases mean, and then come back and test them out on us later on. Mishinewe.
I would like to shift to a discussion of MIDA now. MIDA is our shorthand name for the Miami, Illinois Digital Archives, the creation of which was funded by an Anna Dell grant in 2012. MIDA, it should be emphasized, is a separate database from the Myaamia dictionary program that Jarrid just talked about. MIDA arose out of a need for a place where the huge amount of raw data we have on the Myaamia language could be stored in an easily searchable database. The big difference between the Myaamia dictionary and MIDA is that, unlike the Myaamia dictionary, MIDA is not a language learning tool, but a research tool. Oh, sorry. Maybe I should just do this. That is, MIDA is not designed to be used on a day-to-day basis by language learners. My conviction has long been that when someone tries to make something that is to be used simultaneously for both research and teaching, it usually does neither terribly well. This is why, even though the 2 databases connect to each other, neither of them tries to serve the function of the other one. And as mentioned, MIDA is meant to ultimately store all the primary data, raw data we have on the Myaamia Illinois language. As some of you know, our information on the Myaamia language derives entirely from about 240 years of written, unpublished notes of wildly variable quality. While we are very fortunate to have such extensive data on Myaamia, the general level of disorganization of the original materials has always slowed down our ability to make full use of them. Even the best organized materials on Myaamia can be difficult to search. As an example, note this randomly chosen page from Le Boulager's 185-page French to Illinois dictionary from the early 1700s. I don't know how many of you have ever seen what this looks like before. Note that in this manuscript you can look up things up under French keywords, but not only are the Myaamia or Illinois words not spelled in anything like our standard phonetic spelling, but also many, many words are found far from any kind of keyword where one might think to look for them. Moreover, the translations are all in French, and in a rather old-fashioned French at that, and even if you read French, the translations aren't always accurate. So this manuscript obviously can't be used as an immediate source of language teaching data. The exact same problems arise with Pinet's 574-page French to Illinois dictionary from the 1690s, but the trouble with finding things in this manuscript is even worse due to how messy it obviously is. I admit I purposely picked a sort of one of the worst pages in it, but this gives you this is not wildly atypical. And in the massive 586-page Largelier Illinois to French dictionary, all the words are listed in alphabetical order of the Miami, Illinois words. So unless you know what a word is supposed to look like in its Miami, Illinois form, data is even harder to find. And many of these same issues of being able to find data easily apply to the modern sources too. One of our biggest, richest sources of modern Miami, Illinois data is from Albert Gatchett, who worked on the language from 1895 to 1902, mostly in Oklahoma. Gatchett recorded his data in over 8,000 file cards that look like this, as well as in 2 large bound notebooks where the data looks like this. And similarly, Jacob Dunn, who many of you have probably heard of, collected a large amount of data on Myaamia about 10 years after Gatchett in both Indiana and Oklahoma, with over 1,000 file cards and hundreds of pages of field notes, which also show the same challenges of usability. And this is a typical example of one of Dunn's file cards. And this is a typical page of Dunn's field notes. The awkwardness of using these actually, hang on here. The awkwardness of using these original sources has created the need for a database where raw data from all these different manuscripts can be cataloged and analyzed for ultimate use in language teaching. For the last 27 years or so, for my own research, I have used a series of Microsoft Word files for this purpose, and at the present, these files now add up to about 1,200 pages. While I still use these files constantly and have no particular plans to abandon them, obviously this format is far from the best system for organizing a dictionary. Though in my defense, all I can say is that in 1988, Word files probably were the best way. Thus was born MIDA. This is the start page, at least as it was recently. At the present time, MIDA is still very much in development, and the only data source that we have uploaded it into it so far is Le Boulager's 185-page, 300-page French to Illinois dictionary. The manuscript where all the pages look like this. I chose the Le Boulager dictionary to be the first document loaded into MIDA for several reasons. Le Boulager has never been published in any way, so its data was still relatively inaccessible. The physical condition of the manuscript and its handwriting are both superb, so keying it into computer would not present undue hardships. And the Le Boulager manuscript contains more example sentences and phrases than any of the other early dictionaries, so its data is urgently needed for research on Myaamia syntax and word order. So after we got the grant in 2012, one of the first things we started doing was keying the Le Boulager manuscript onto computer for the first time. Since MIDA was still under construction, we used a temporary spreadsheet to enter the data at first. Carol Katz was hired to key the manuscript in and did an amazing job in a fraction of the time that we thought it would take. Then Michael McCafferty was hired to translate the old-fashioned French definitions in the dictionary into English, thus rendering the manuscript much more accessible. When we finally got an early version of MIDA up and running, the Le Boulager spreadsheet was uploaded into it. At this point, my part of the task began in earnest, namely filling in grammatical analyses, corrected spellings, corrected translations, related words from other languages, and semantic fields for all the data for all 185 pages. And at this point, I would like to do a quick demonstration of some of the features of MIDA. I can't demonstrate all the things it does, but I can run through some of the more striking, cooler things. As a way of demonstrating the function of MIDA, I would first like to walk through the creation of a typical MIDA entry with most of the fields filled in. As an example, look at this entry on page 64, line 53 of the Le Boulager manuscript. I'm referring here to the word niraperima, which you can see in the lower right-hand corner of this. The entry screen for this word in MIDA, before hardly anything was filled in, would look like this. And if you look at the top there, you see the original word as it's from the manuscript in the original Miami, Illinois line. If one looks at the end of this line, Niraperima is given in French with the gloss je mets à la place. My French pronunciation is not good, so forget that. Or this is literally, I put him into place. This would be entered in the original French-Latin field in MIDA. So let's see here. Right there, so you see where the French gloss is now put in. And the English translation of the French gloss, not what the word really means, but the straight-up translation of the French, goes in the English translation field below that. However, it's not immediately obvious yet how exactly to spell and pronounce this word in Myaamia, so we have a dedicated cognate field for related words in other Algonquian languages, as well as related forms of these words in other sources. And you can see here that I've, is this slide 19? Yeah, you can see here I've expanded the cognate field so you can see what it looks like with no data entered into it. So when you do a little digging, it turns out there are related forms of this word in other languages, and the one I'm going to give here most notably is Meskwaki na Penemewa, down towards the bottom there. In addition to confirming where the long vowels are in this word, this Meskwaki word helps clarify the meaning of the Myaamia word, since the Meskwaki word means he adopts him in place of a deceased relative. And I'm sorry the gloss cuts off at the right-hand end there. And as it turns out, a matching form in Largillier's Myaamia dictionary confirms this with an even more precise definition, I adopt him in place of the deceased one. So remember, this is both the field where both forms from related languages and from other sources both go. And this word doesn't tell us, while this word doesn't tell us anything about the exact pronunciation of this word, it clarifies the meaning quite a lot. And, for good measure, the only time that this word is found after the 1700s is the one time it's given in Jacob Dunn's notes, where he gives a form, Nina Pelema, which he rather vaguely translates as, I put in his place. This form is helpful for telling us that the modern Myaamia pronunciation of the word would be Napelim, instead of the old Illinois Raperim. This and the long and short vowels in the Meskwaki form enable us to fill in the modern Myaamia spelling of the original word, which goes up in the modern Miami, Illinois spelling field, upper left there. However, this is a rather old-fashioned way of saying this word in Myaamia, so the more normal way to say this that we would now teach with different verb endings goes in the modern Myaamia speech form, Myaamiaki. Next, we have to fill in the corrected translation of this word, since it clearly doesn't really mean I put him into place. From the Largillier and Meskwaki words, it's clear that this word really means something like I adopt him in place of my child, which goes in the English translation subfield of the original Miami, Illinois field. Now, at this point, I would like to show you the MIDA Morpheme Analysis function, which has been one of the most challenging ones to perfect, but one of the most helpful ones, most powerful ones. MIDA is a very important function under modern Miami, Illinois speech form that enables you to enter the constituent parts of each Miami, Illinois word. It would be a little too time-consuming to walk through the process of how this is actually done in the program, but here is a completed morpheme breakdown for Napelim. At the top here is the stem with its corrected translation and its part of speech. Then under this is the first half of this word, nop, which means something along the lines of substitute or in place of, and it's part of speech as well. And below that is the second half of the word, alim, which is kind of hard to describe, but which generally means that the verb it's attached to denotes some kind of action by thought or some sort of mental process or something like that, but with an animate object. So that means that napelim very literally means something like substitute him or think of him in place of someone, though its idiomatic meaning in real practice is, like I said, adopt him in place of a child or relative. Let's see here. And here's what it looks like in a completed record down to the bottom third of the screen. So this is basically a completely fleshed out record of with everything we know filled in. Okay, now to close, I would like to say, with the rest of my time, I would like to say a few things about the search function in MIDA. you can see that the search bar for MIDA here is in the upper left-hand corner. To the right of that, where it says original Myaamia, Illinois, is the pull down for the different search fields you can specify. There are currently 14 different fields in which you can search for Myaamia words. This is just the ones that come down to the pull down right here, but here's an incomplete list of all the possible fields that one could search for. These are original Myaamia, Illinois, original French or Latin, English translation of French, English translation of Myaamia, Illinois, keyword, keyword translation, English translation of French original Miami, modern Myaamia, Illinois speech form, stem, morpheme, cognate, comment, semantic field, syntax, and sound file. It would take far too long to give examples of all these searches, and much of the data necessary for some of these searches isn't entered yet. But to give you a sense of how some of these searches look, let's try searching on English translations of French words, which is one of the main searches that we can easily do right now, which is possibly most useful. Suppose you were researching weather terminology and you wanted to know what terms for snow were in Le Boulanger. You can simply enter snow in the search field and choose English translation of the French from the pull down and click search. And this is the search screen you get. There will eventually be many more results than this, but this is what comes up at the moment. As you see from the bottom, 54 entries come up with the word snow. And this screen lists the first 10. You simply click on any of these records and the full screen for that record comes up. So for example, say you wanted to see the third record down, the one that's translated from the French, half-melted snow. You click on it and you get this screen and the lower half of the screen here. In addition, you can also search on the morpheme breakdown field, the field where the constituent parts of the words are given. That is, you can create a search listing of all words that have a particular common part of a word. For example, when we discussed the Napalim word earlier, I mentioned a part of the word, a morpheme alim, that is used to classify Myaamia verbs that represent some kind of thought or mental action, and as such is used in hundreds of different verbs. If you do a search for alim on the stem field, you get these 9 results. And as more of the data is fleshed out by me, this will probably come out to hundreds of entries and not just these 9. At the moment, only 9 come up because the function cataloging the morpheme breakdown has only just been completed and perfected, and so I haven't really been able to feel it for many words yet. But the pattern that emerges just even with these verbs is clear. You can see the alim ending on words with meanings like to know, to quit thinking about someone, to love or think well of someone, as well as the adopt verb I discussed before. So the semantic pattern of this ending marking verbs of different types of thoughts is obvious. Again, as the morpheme breakdown functions for more and more words is filled in, this kind of search will allow us to make more and more discoveries like this. And so the ultimate goal is to be able to use this function for morphemes that we don't totally understand, parts of words we don't understand. And eventually, when it's entered for so many words in the dictionary, we can run searches like this and just sort of see the patterns right there to try to figure more things out. To close, I should stress right now that I have only just begun processing the Le Boulanger data, and finishing the task of doing so is a long-range project. Long-range as in many years. When you realize that the ultimate goal is ideally to add not only all 3 Illinois dictionaries into MIDA, but also all the modern sources as well, it's safe to say that processing and then analyzing all the data from all the sources in MIDA could literally take decades. This is just to put the whole project in perspective. In the meantime, though, MIDA is already making the Myaamia, Illinois data far more accessible and much easier to make use of. As more and more data is entered and analyzed, its usefulness to language teaching and research projects will only increase. Thank you.